Hi, Linda from Thistledown and Company again. This is another one of my video tutorials to inspire you in quilting and show you new and different techniques. Today's technique, we are going to explore making a collage quilt. I'm sure many of you are familiar with collage quilts. They're very popular. There's a lot of really cool patterns out there. And a collage quilt will feed your artistic and playful side, because there's a lot of things that you have control over, and it's a lot of fun cutting out, and you'll see as we go along. So I think you'll really enjoy it. We're going to do something very simple, not too over the top. This is what we're going to be doing, is this open heart. So what we're going to start with is you need a pattern. So in this case, this is our pattern, and you're going to need a foundation to build your collage on. The perfect foundation for collage quilts is Whisperlite Tracer Foundation. It's a super lightweight foundation. There is no fusible on it, so there's no glue to worry about. You can draw on it, you can iron it, you can wash it. It cuts nice and clean. So this is what we're going to use to build our collage foundation on. That's very important. So first, you're going to take your foundation, lay it on your pattern, and then using a number 2 pencil, you are just going to trace your pattern onto the Whisperlite. And you don't have to be super exact with these lines because you're not going to see them. We're going to be covering them up. So you're going to trace the pattern. Ta-da! Magic. There's one already traced. So you can see we've traced the design. Okay, so that's what we are going to build our collage on. Well, what are we going to build our collage out of? Here comes the fun part. You are going to choose a variety of large print fabrics with large and interesting motifs, similar to my top. This would be fun to cut up, but it's a knit, and we're not going to be using knits. But all these fabrics have excellent motifs that you can cut to make our elements, and I'll show you what I mean. Now, if you have a stash, you can choose that, or just buy a collection of fat quarters. I used about 10 to 11 fat quarters for the project behind. You are going to take your fat quarter, and you are going to take fusible web, paper-backed fusible web. In this case, I'm using Heat and Bond Light. I also like Steam Seam 2 Light, your choice. But you're going to take a piece of fusible web. Now you can just do a section of your fabric, or if you want, you can cut a piece of fusible and fuse the entire piece of fabric. But this is a small project, so I chose to just do small sections of fabric from a large variety of fabrics. So you're going to place your fusible web onto the wrong side of your fabric. That's very important. So we're going to go over to the iron, and we are going to just press the fusible web onto the wrong side of your fabric. You might be asking, what's this shiny thing on my pressing mat? This is a silicone pressing sheet, and that is very nice to use when you're using any kind of fusible, because if you get fusible on here, you can just wipe it off rather than getting it on your pressing surface, and then it's there to stay. So silicone pressing mat is nice to have. So now we have our fabric with our fusible web on the back. And because I'm just using this section of it, I'm going to cut it out. And we can save this for another project, of course. So, I've also done that with this fabric. And I know I want to cut elements from this grouping of flowers, so I made sure my fusible is covering that. So again, I'm going to cut this section out. See, on this fabric, if you fuse the whole thing, you'd have a lot of blue space that you're not going to use. So you just cut your fusibles to cover the motifs you're going to want to cut out. So then you are going to get a nice small sharp scissors, and you're going to begin cutting. And you're going to just cut out elements that you like. And because there's paper on the fusible, it makes it easy to cut the fabrics. It cuts nice and crisp. And you can cut right along the lines of the motif that you like. And then you can just cut over where you want. I'm not going to cut that skinny stem. Move over to here. And I'm going to keep cutting. And there's one motif. And there's lots of motifs in here to choose from. This next leaf is cool. And you don't have to do all the little tiny jiggity-jaggities, but you can if you want to. It's up to you how precision cutting you want to get. For this purpose, I don't want to stay here all day, so I'm going to not cut the little jiggity-jaggities. Okay, so we're going to cut that. There's another motif. And so you just keep cutting motifs out of your fabrics. And you are going to end up with fabrics that look like this. All kinds of raggedy pieces of fabric because you've cut all the motifs out of them. And like, for instance, this one, this was a giant flower. I didn't want anything that big. Our collage is not that large, so I just cut out the top part of that flower. There it is. And then I cut out another piece. So anyway, you're cutting your motifs out of your fabric. Because there's paper on the back, they cut out nice and crisp. If you tried to cut them out and then put fusible on it, it would be a big mess. You'd be very frustrated. So now you have a collection of motifs. So you are going to kind of arrange them by size. You're going to have different size motifs, okay? So that way, when you're building your collage, if you need to fill a big space, you can grab a large motif. Oh, this was the cute little chippy out of Tula Pink's fabric. So now, you have your motifs, different sizes, and there's still paper on the back. You want to remove the paper. So what you're going to do is take a pin, and you're going to score the back of the paper with the point of the pin, and it makes the paper come off nice and easy, rather than trying to peel it up with your fingernail from the edge, because then you're going to fray the edge and it'll get all messy. So just score the back, just a nice quick score, fold it back, and the paper comes right off. So that's the easiest way to remove the paper from the fusible web. Now we have our Whisperlite, our foundation that we're going to be building on, that we traced from the pattern. So now we need to start filling in our pattern. And this motif makes a really nice bottom of the heart, because it has that little point to it. So you kind of search through the motifs and see what fits where. We're going to fill this all in. You don't want any open spaces. You're going to fill the outline in completely. And you're going to layer them. Need to fill in something small here. Oh, that one still has paper. And you're just going to keep building your motif. nice one for over here. And you're gonna want some lights, some darks. You don't want them all to blend the same. Now this one, you see when I place it, this point is kind of sticking out, kind of funny looking. Just because you've cut them out once doesn't mean you can't cut them again. So if you need to make a motif a little smaller or trim it, just trim it off, make it fit. See, that's better now. We don't have that funny tail sticking out there. And we'll want to fill in under here. So as you can see, I'm covering the lines. And building up. Again, the paper. Score. And this is, I think, really one of the fun parts of making a collage quilt, is just playing with all the different placements of the fabrics. Now this is really large, so again, this large flower that I cut out, you can cut down and you just kind of decide where you want to go. You can follow one of the motifs. So just because it starts out as something large doesn't mean you can't make it smaller. So just play with it all. It's almost like being in kindergarten again. Except we're not using any paste. Okay. See, so we're just going to continue building. Oh, there's my iron. That means it's ready for us, wants to get fused. So I'm going to place a couple more. And like this little one here, we need to fill in under here. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to take this over to the iron and show you our next step. Okay, now we're at our ironing surface, and I have my silicone pressing mat down, so that way we know we're not going to get any fusible on our ironing board, because then, like I said, you can't get it off. So have an iron set, and we have our motifs. I'm not filling in the whole thing because I don't want to be here all day for you. So we are going to make sure everything is like we like it. Make sure all the motifs. You may want to put this on a small piece of cardboard or a small mat when you're carrying it over from the area you were building it on, or build it here at your pressing station. So when you pick it up and move it, your motifs stay where they are. But you are simply going to now press. Oh, wait, I gotta move this one over. There's an empty space. There we go. Now you're going to press, and this is going to fuse all the elements in place, because remember, we have the fusible web on the back of our fabrics. So there we are. That is fusing them all in place. So now our motifs are fused down to our foundation. So you're going to fill in the whole thing, of course. But after you get the whole thing filled in and all fused down, then you are going to take a nice little sharp scissors, and you're going to cut away the foundation. Now what's nice about the Whisperlite is it cuts away clean and easy. There aren't any threads that are going to show. It really cuts away easy. You're going to just keep cutting away. If your scissors is sharp enough, you can almost just kind of glide along the edge and it'll cut it away. And any little corners, go in with your tip and get them out. So you're going to keep cutting, and you're going to cut it all out. Okay. So we're going to cut it all out on the outside. we're going to keep the inside intact for just a little bit, and I'll show you why. Okay, so I'm going to cut this away a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now you can see that we have the foundation cut away from our motifs. So now, as you can see in the sample behind me, we have love in our heart. And also, our motif is our collage is on a background. So you need to choose your background fabric. So let's move these out of the way. And as far as background fabric choices, you don't want something that's going to interfere too much with your collage, but you also want to have an interesting background. So these are a few options just to show you what they look like. So there's that. That's kind of a sweet romantic feel. This low volume map and text type print has more of a modern feel, similar to the one that we have up on the wall. And then this one, this is just a real soft gray tone on tone. So you can see a variety of backgrounds kind of changes the flavor of it, but none of them are wrong. So you're going to choose your background. We're just going to choose this one today. And we need to get love in the heart. Now we're using a fat quarter, so it's 18 by 22. Okay, we're going to cut it a little smaller, but you're going to want to find the center of your fat quarter, fold it in half, fold it in half again, and put a pin in it, unfold it. There's my pin. I can take a washout marker and put it up. And then we'll take out the pin. You don't want to iron over that. Okay, so there's our center. So then, this is our collage. But again, we need love in our heart. So, here's what we're going to embroider in the center is the word love. And this is really a cool way to transfer designs. We're going to lay this on. There's still Whisperlite here in the center. We haven't cut that out yet. And we're going to center it where it looks right. That looks good to me. Hope it looks good to you. And then we're going to use a friction marker. And a friction marker is erasable with heat. And it's a nice fine point. So we're going to take and we're going to trace the word onto the Whisperlite. Okay, so now we have it on the Whisperlite foundation. So now we're going to center this on our fat quarter. And if you want, you can put a couple pins in. Well, okie doke. And now we're going to trace it again with the same friction marker. I'll go a little darker so you'll be able to see it when you're embroidering. And because the Whisperlite is so lightweight This is where the magic happens. There's the word. So that's a super easy way to transfer designs. You don't have to dig out a light box or hold it up to a window. It's also great for transferring designs onto darker fabrics, or even wool that you can't see through. So there's our word. So that we'll be able to embroider that on our background. So let's get our embroidery things together, and then we can embroider our word. Love. Okay, now I said embroidery. Some of you may go, oh my gosh, embroidery. This is super easy. Anyone can do it. It's very simple hand embroidery, and you might really find you like it. It can be very relaxing. So you're going to want an embroidery hoop, and take the hoop apart. You put the area you want to embroider in the middle. Take the outside of the hoop, put it on, and then you want to tighten it up. And make sure the fabric's nice and tight in there. Almost there. There we go. That's going to keep your fabric stabilized. Doesn't have to be exactly in the center. This is just for our stitching. Now, you're going to get some embroidery floss, and most drop floss is sold in 6 strands. You're going to separate, you're going to cut a length of floss about 18 inches long, 18, 20 inches long, and you're going to separate it so that you only are working with 2 strands. So there's 2 strands of floss. You're going to thread a size 8 embroidery needle. It has a slightly larger eye, so you can fit it through. So the stitch we're going to be using is the outline or stem stitch, and it's very easy. You're going to come up a little bit before the end on the line. You're going to pull up. You're going to leave a little tail on the back. Actually a big tail. And we'll work that into our stitches to secure it, so that way we don't have to have a knot on the back. So you're going to go down, and then we're going to come back up right by our other stitch. So that's going to be our first stitch. Okay. Now we are going to keep our thread to one side, meaning all of our thread that we're working with is always going to say this side of the L. Okay, so you're going to go down and then up and then down and then back up just next to the other stitch. And then down and back up to the other, next to the other stitch. It's not at the end, it's just past the end on one side of your threads. And then you just continue stitching. And that is called the stem or outline stitch. And it's a very good stitch to use for words because you can curve it around, and it's a small stitch, so you can make all the small curves. And so you're just going to continue stitching until our embroidery is done. Now I'm going to stop here on the front. I'm not going to stitch the whole thing. I'm going to show you on the back how we're going to anchor our stitch with the tail that we left. Well, okay, so you're going to thread this tail and your needle again. Oh, there's one. Hold on, we'll get it. Sure we will. I should have left a longer tail. Or had less coffee this morning. Bear with me. We're getting it. But this is a nice way to anchor your threads so that you don't have to have a knot in the back. Oh my gosh, one again. Well, I'll do it with one so you get the idea. So you're going to thread both threads through. And then you're just going to take and you're going to go under the stitches on the back one way and then the other way and then back through again. And that's going to anchor your tails. And then you can just cut those off. And then that way you don't have any knots on the back of your piece. So you will continue, of course, embroidering until you finish the word. And I'm going to bring this down here. Okay, so there's our finished word. And this has been all fused down. Now, when we put it on our background, let me take this out of the hoop. You're going to be top stitching onto this to secure it to the background permanently. Cut that off. Okay, so here's our background. Here's our motif we were working with. Okay, so you're going to be putting it on your background. Now, if you use a foundation that's heavy, there's several different ones that are heavier, or a lightweight fabric. Some people use, you know, a thin voile fabric. To adhere it to your background, then you have to put another layer of fusible. Then your collage is going to get very stiff and very thick. So the Whisperlite, over to the iron here. The Whisperlite is porous enough that when you put it on your background and fuse it again, enough of the fusible will come through the Whisperlite and tack it to your background. So that way you don't have to put a second layer of fusible, which makes it very bulky, very stiff, and harder to stitch through when we do our top stitching. So again, you just, of course this hasn't all been trimmed away, but to save time, I don't want to waste all your time watching me, so you can go have fun and start doing this. Get all your fun fabrics together, get your fusibles together. Okay, so that is tacked down. So then, one of the final steps in the collage is edge stitching. Okay, we're not talking a satin or a zigzag stitch. We are talking about a simple straight stitch with a thread that kind of blends with most of your fabrics. You're not going to find the perfect thread that's going to blend with everything. If you're a real stickler, you could stop and change thread colors all the time, but I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. So we are simply going to stitch very close to the edge of our, oh, let's go forward, to the edge of our fabric. Just edge stitching. And just a straight stitch. And you're just going to follow it along. And I will show you over here. See if we can get a close-up of the edge stitching. You can see here, I've edge stitched along the whole edge of the outside. Okay, I haven't gotten the inside done yet. And then you might want to go along and do some stitching within the motifs as well. Now, collage quilts are not going to be washed. They're probably not going to be used on a bed. They're mainly wall pieces. In fact, you could turn this into, you could buy a large embroidery hoop and just hoop this and put it on your wall. Or what I'm most likely going to do is put batting and backing on this like a quilt, do some quilting, and bind it, and it'll be a wall piece or maybe a pillow. But it's not something that you're going to be throwing in the wash, which is why you don't have to do a zigzag stitch over all the edges. It's called raw edge applique. And you're just stitching with a straight stitch along the edge. If you were to wash this, then of course you're going to get the fabric fraying a little bit. And we don't really want that on this. So that's how you finish it off, your actual collage onto your background. So to reiterate, you are going to trace your design onto the foundation, and then you are going to cut all your fabric pieces, all your little motifs out of your fun fabrics, all the fabrics that have interesting large motifs and elements to cut. Then you're going to take the paper fusible backing off, and now you have fusible on the back of your fabrics. You're going to place your fabrics on your pattern, fill it all in, carefully take it over to your ironing surface, iron it in place, trim away the outer foundation and the inner foundation after you trace your your love. You're going to embroider this. This is fused in place, top stitched in place, and then you'll finish it off into the project of your choice. But it's a really fun technique. I really enjoy doing this. Like I said, it feeds your playful and artistic side. It's just a lot of cutting and playing and color and placement, and anyone can do it. Don't be afraid to try it. It's really a fun thing to do. And as you can see, the Whisperlite foundation, because you can fuse it a second time to your foundation without adding a second layer of fusible, is fabulous. It trims away nice and clean. You can draw on it nice and easy. It's super lightweight. It's not adding a whole nother layer of bulk because you already have fabric with fusible, which makes it stiff. And so it really is, give it a try. It's a great foundation to use for collage quilts. And my Whisperlite comes in 1 yard, 2 yard, 5 yard packages, and we sell it in 25 yard bolts. You can wash it, draw on it, iron it on medium, and you'll see other uses in my other videos. And I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. Happy to answer. Thanks for joining me again. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.